Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Aldo Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be taking a look at the E3 Saxo Classic, E3 Harold Becker, E3 whatever the heck it is. It seems to change names an awful lot, but it's the sort of Flanders build-up race, the big one. It's like 205 kilometers, so not the longest race in the world, but it's certainly quite difficult in the fact that it replicates Flanders quite well because it's got the Aert Paterberg combination in there. So this is really the big warm-up test for a lot of these riders, which hence why Wout van Aert is here, it's why Mathieu van der Poel is here. And those two being the most expensive riders, I think both of them are good choices. I think that Van der Poel looked really good at San Remo, finishing 10th place, even though he was working for Philipsen. And yeah, I just think that Van der Poel's safe. Van Aert, great opening weekend, because he was third? He was on third at Omloop and first, and he won Kerner. If he continues that, or if he has continued that, then he's going to be great. It's very possible that these two just ride off into the distance and nobody sees them again with 40 kilometres to go. That's honestly a possibility. Van Aert maybe suffers from the fact that he's got a lot of teammates here. How are Visma going to play this? Are they going to try and get somebody like Jorgensen or Tratnik or whoever else it might be on their team up the road early? And is that rider therefore going to stay away because Alpecin's team here doesn't look particularly strong? So therefore, Visma Lease bike might win in a different way that's not just Mathieu and Van Aert. I just believe that when Van der Poel likely attacks on the Ardèche or Paterberg, only really Van Aert is going to be able to stick with him. That's my personal take on it. Pedersen, to be honest with you, I think Pedersen is more of like a defensive style rider is what I've decided. He's sort of where his niche is. He was good in San Remo, but that's because it was sort of a sprint at the end. But this is really a race which favours the attackers. When you look back at previous results in this race, it's not really like sprints it is a sprint which usually wins kind of like the group at the front, but you've got to make that front group, and I just don't really think Pedersen's going to do that. I think he prefers the race to kind of be more controlled, and then he can win in a sprint at the end. He finished, even though he looked really good at this, coming into this race last year, he finished like 13th, and to be honest with you, at 26 credits, I really just can't be having that. I think there are riders who are cheaper who are going to be doing a very similar job to Pedersen. He is a safe pick, but I just think there's better value for money. De Lee, I've got too many question marks over. I'm not sure where his head or his legs are at the moment, but he's just not quite performing. Hershey has come top 10 in this race like once, but he's really not the guy for this race, I don't think. Mohoric is the next rider who I'd really consider, considering how he is an attacking style of rider, and generally you do see kind of like just ones and twos coming across the line in this race, just because it's really intense, like lots of climbing and quite a relatively short race. And I think in Mohoric, he races quite smart, he gets ahead of moves, he anticipates and he gets up the road a bit earlier. And yeah, I think that Mohoric is a good option for a top 10 here. I think that's realistically where he'll come. Could he sneak a top 5? Yes. But I don't really see him winning this race, but that's not really why I'd be picking him. 22 credit riders: Alaphilippe, Asgreen, Benoit, Gourmet, Jorgensen, Lampart, Madouas, Matthews and Van Baarle. I'd say my favourite ones are Jorgensen and probably Matthews actually as well, based upon how he looked at San Remo. I'd say that Matthews is very similar to what I think Pedersen is. They're both kind of like the sprinter type. So I'd say that if you can't afford Pedersen, then go with Matthews because they fulfill a similar sort of role. Jorgensen is probably the best considering how he was up there in that move in Omloop with Wout and Schoens and Pidcock and stuff, and then he won Paris-Nice. So obviously he's in flying form, and I think that Jorgensen is a real danger man for if Wout isn't the rider for Visma Lease bike to go up the road, then Jorgensen certainly will be. Alongside maybe Tratnik for 20 credit riders, of course, being Kung, Stuyven, Tratnik, Trentin and Vellens. I think all of these are pretty decent. We'll linger on Tratnik for a little bit. I think that he, winning Omloop, obviously he's really good. He's had a very good year. And I think there's no reason to not pick him, other than the fact that if you imagine a scenario where, say, a Visma Lease bike, rider gets up the road, I've already failed the challenge. The Visma Lease bike rider gets up the road. The other ones are just going to be marking moves behind, and then the groups might come back together, and then how are those Visma Lease bike riders going to do in a sprint? They're going to essentially kind of mark out moves, but then that's just going to mean that they do worse Velogames wise because they end up just bringing more people into the fray. I don't really know, but I think that Tratnik and Jorgensen also, they make sense. Honestly, all these 20 credit riders do. Kung's a very good attacking option. He's been looking like he's been building very well this year, and I think that Kung is, he's on my radar as somebody who's going to do quite well in these Cobble Classics. This could certainly be the race, I think. All those riders who are sort of second tier favourites, but they're very attacking. They're not going to wait for a sprint. They're going to really be animating the race. And that's really the people who win this race are the ones who animate it and don't just wait around for a sprint to happen at the end. Stuyven and Trentin I see more as those defensive style options. Stuyven, I don't know if he's going to be working for Pedersen, so that's a question mark. If you're feeling a little bit rogue, I think he's a good differential for if Pedersen is more of like the reserve sprinting type, then Stuyven might get up the road. Trentin is at the disadvantage where he's going to have like no teammates around him, so that's the one thing which holds me back from picking Trentin. I'd say that Kung, Tratnik and Velens are the best ones from those 18 credit riders. I think that Pollett's the best, to be honest. After finishing second at Omloop, like I said, we've got Velens here. Pollett's quite underrated, I think, and UE without Pogačar here, these guys are going to be pretty keen to try and show their performance, show their best, their best form of themselves to try and get into like the Flanders team and stuff like that. So I think Pollett's good. Tiller, Sheffield, Nizzolo, Sunkrau, Zingler. I just don't really rate any of these. Sheffield, maybe. He's still very young. I just haven't quite seen enough from Sheffield. There will come a time where he will be on all of our Classics teams because he is such a sensational talent, but I just don't think that it's quite yet is my issue. So honestly, the 18 credits are a little bit meh, but if you had to pick one, I'd go with Pollett. 16 credit riders, Bettiol's great value. It's very, the Poggio, when Pogačar went, Van der Poel followed, and Bettiol was the guy who was following, and I'm like, wow, he was the guy following, 16 credits. He's obviously in great form, trying to replicate that 2019 season. So I think Bettiol's easily the best 16 credit rider. Lazcano probably the second best. He's been looking decent so far this year, should be leading Movistar in this race. Narsson and Van Poppel are more outside picks. Narsson was decent at Omloop, so therefore you could, I'd say that he's got probably more premise to pick him than Van Poppel. 14 credit riders, my favourites are Navarez. In fact, Navarez is pretty much it. I just don't think the other ones are that great. You could argue Turner or Fred Wright, but I just, this isn't like 2022 anymore, and I haven't seen enough from him so far this year. Navarez was up there in San Remo. He's had a good year so far, and I think he should honestly be leading Ineos in this race. The other 14 credit riders I just don't rate too much, to be honest with you. I think they are, I just don't really rate their chances here. 12 credit riders, you could go Bjerg, but they've got Pollett and Velens here, so I don't know who they're necessarily riding for. I'd say that Bjerg is more of an outside option, and he was worth it when he was 6 credits like last year, but 12 credits is just quite expensive. It puts me off just a little bit. Campenarts I think is good. He's looked incredible the last couple of weeks. Paris-Nice, he was in that breakaway. I just think he's been looking really strong, to be honest. And so I think that he should be a good option for a top 15 in this race. And other 12 credit riders aren't that great, other than maybe Tom Van Asbrook, who's been decent recently. And Israel without a big leader certainly could, lots of their riders will get a bit of a free card to do whatever they want. Persson Hagenes is decent at 10 credits. Winner of a Spartak Munsterland Giro last year. Is it too hard for him? He is 20 years old. He's an incredible talent. But they've just got so many other riders. I just expect him to be more of a domestique, to be honest with you. Although, a domestique who will probably get assist points. I'd be utterly shocked if a Visma Lease bike rider didn't finish on the podium of this race. Haller has done well in this race in the past. He hasn't quite shown that form so far this year. Then again, Bora don't have a big leader in this race, so Haller could certainly pull one out of the bag here. Naylands I'm a big fan of. He was good in Tirreno. He was climbing surprisingly well for quite, a relatively tall and big classic style rider. He was climbing quite well, and that's generally a good sign that they're in really good form. So Naylands I like. He was 12th in this race last year, and I think that's really good value, to be honest. I'd say he's my favourite 10 credit rider. 8 credit riders, on the other hand, I just don't really like any of these whatsoever. They're all sort of assist point guys who could finish a top 20 on like a really good day, but I just don't see it happening. So I'm just going to skip over the 8s because I don't think that they're honestly that great. I think you should try and stay away from them. 6 credit riders, you've got Canal for Movistar. I've been singing praises for him all year round, so we may as well just keep going. He's actually been pretty consistent, and with only Lazcano ahead of him, he could certainly finish a top 30. Dens, like I said, Bora don't have a big leader, so maybe he could get in the breakaway. I do think Bora should probably try and get in the breakaway, and that would probably be one of their better chances of success. Kirsch for maybe assist points on Pedersen, and maybe he finishes top 30 as well. Lebert has been in the breakaway quite a lot. Last year he was, so maybe he might do that again. Meyerhofer, I think he'll be working for Trentin, but it's worthwhile pointing him out anyway. You've got Norsgaard, but also Johan Jacobs, who's a little bit further up, who I skipped over. Maybe I didn't skip over him. Him and Johan Jacobs you could definitely pick as guys who get the breakaway quite a bit. Kelland O'Brien, obviously, think back to last year, he was very good at getting in the breakaway and doing a pretty decent result. So Kelland's actually pretty good at 6 credits. I think that's probably one of my favourite ones in the 6 credit bracket. Luke Rowe, if you think that maybe he can pull off, I don't know, like a 2016, 2017 Luke Rowe kind of performance. Jonas Ruch, probably a decent one for a top 30 as well. Maybe he might get in the breakaway. Maybe he'll just be helping Bettiol, but worthwhile shouting out anyway. Tlanchon, given that they've only got Oliver Narsson here as a leader, I'd say that Tlanchon has looked good this year, and he could certainly again get another top 25 performance, I believe. And that's it for the 6s. For the 4s, you're really looking at assist points or guys to get in the breakaway. So look at generally World Tour teams who don't have a big leader. So DSM is a good one to start with. They don't really have a big leader in this race, so they should be trying to get into the breakaway. So pick some of those guys, maybe the Bora boys as well. Bahrain, if you think that Mahorich is going to do well, you could try get the assist points on him. I think that Emil Herzog is actually worth it as a bit of a punt. Bora have said that he is kind of he's their project to become their classic style star in the future for the Cobble Classics. He didn't do that great at Omloop, but Bora have a lot of faith in him. So you could put a bit of a punt on him rather than going on assist points or whatever like that. This is the team which I have at the moment, very safe with the 2 big leaders, but I will give you some alternatives. So, for example, you could go with either this, where you have the 2 big guys, Van der Poel and Van Aert, or you could take one of them off and maybe go with Jorgensen, put those onto Naylands, and get yourself a Tratnik. So you could do something like that. Or you could take Van der Poel, or you could do this, where you take Van der Poel off, maybe you get Kung on, you put those points onto Tlanchon to get Campenarts, and then you put those points onto Herzog to get yourself Naylands. And then there's this style of team where you've got neither of the big 2, but you've got lots of guys here who could be finishing inside the top 20. I'm not sure which one is best, given that Van der Poel and Van Aert might just ride off into the distance. The scoring system does mean that you end up getting 45 points for every breakaway milestone you reach. And given that this is a Category 2 race, let's say 40 Ks to go, they each get another 90 points if they just ride off together. So that's 90 points, but you times it by 2, so it's 180, and that's the equivalent of getting somebody in 11th place in this race. It can sometimes just be better to go with the big 2 favourites and just try and hope for the other boys in your team to fill out the other positions. But let me know what you're thinking in the comment section down below. I've given you sort of 3 team options there. Which one do you like? Which one do you think makes the most sense and is going to score the best? And also put your team in the comment section. And all that's left to say is to stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. Salut!